Let's start with a word of prayer. Father, thank you for this day. Bless us to do your will. Forgive us of our sins. We forgive all those that sin against us, Father. Let your kingdom come and your will be done in our lives and in the study today. Bless our hearts to be open and to receive from the Word of God. Clear distractions out of our mind. Bless us to go out and be witnesses for your glory and your honor. All right, we're starting off with Matthew. We're going to come back. We're following the Sermon on the Mount. We're jumping over two little verses talking about marriage is sacred and binding, because Jesus talks about marriage in Matthew chapter 19, and it's an extensive discussion, and I wanted more time to study it because I don't like to just give verses of Scripture without really studying it and going forward. I know the principles that Jesus teaches in Matthew and the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 19 about divorce, but I did want to give it a good and fair treatment, especially to y'all who are not married. And I wanted to focus on things that were more applicable to you. So we'll come back to that. But this week we're going to study what Jesus had to say about oaths. So turn to Matthew chapter 5, and it's verses 33 through 37. And I'll read this part, and then I'll have y'all read some other verses. Matthew chapter 5, verse 33. Again, you have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform your oaths to the Lord. But I say to you, do not swear at all, neither by heaven, for it is God's throne, nor by earth, for it is his footstool, nor by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great King. Nor shall you swear by your head, because you cannot make one hair white or black. But let your yes be yes and your no, no, for whatever is more than these is from the evil one. So, why is Jesus talking about swearing? First of all, what you got to understand is Jesus is not talking about cuss words here. Okay? Oftentimes when people who are not familiar with the biblical language in the Bible and what Jesus is talking about, they're thinking Jesus is possibly talking about cussing. Jesus is not talking about cussing, although we as Christians, Paul writes in the epistles, don't let any profane communication come out of your mouth, but that which is wholesome and good to the edifying of one another. So we're not supposed to go around cussing and saying bad things and saying coarse or gross or lustful things, right? Because what you talk about is what you think about, and what you think about, you become. But we're not talking about cussing and swearing here. What we're talking about is swearing in order to get your point across. Even today, you'll meet people who think that just saying something yes or no is not enough. They'll think they have to add more emphasis to what they say. They'll say, I went to the store today and I saw a man hit a woman. Okay? But then they'll say, and I swear to you that that's the truth. I promise you that that's the truth. Right? They don't really swear that much often when they're giving stories. Most time when people do swear is when they want to get something from you. Right? They'll tell you, hey, please give me $10. And I promise you, or I swear to you, I'll give it back to you next week. Why do people feel the need to not just say, I'll give it back to you? Why do they have to say, I swear?
So they can say, oh, I really mean that.
Yes, I really mean it. Like, I'm telling you the truth. Well, in those days, the Israelites, or the Jewish people, they didn't want to take the name of God in vain, right? Let's read about that. They didn't want to take the name of God in vain, so they wouldn't swear by God, right? Because think of this. If your own word can't be trusted, what you say is not true, what do you often do?
Say whatever.
You go to a higher authority, right? Right? For example, if in my job, if I have to make a tough decision, I often have to, or I'm supposed to call upon my boss. And to reaffirm what I'm saying, I'll tell the person might question my decision in the matter, and I'll like, no, I conferred about this with my boss, right? I'm not swearing there, I'm just saying I conferred. But many times to make somebody's point, they'll say, no, I swear to you that this higher position or higher person, that this is true or this is going to come to pass. Well, God told Israel in the Old Testament, and I'm going to read that to you right now. It's Numbers chapter 30, verse 2. Oh, give me just a second. I think that's the right verse. Let me see. Oh, no, that's a different one. This one says, if a man makes a vow to the Lord or swears an oath to bind himself by some agreement, he shall not break his word. He shall do according to all that proceeds out of his mouth. That right there in Numbers chapter 30, God is telling the children of Israel that be a person of your word, right? But even in Jesus' days, people had gotten to where their word wasn't enough. Why?
It means nothing.
Because people were lying, right? People were breaking their word, you know? Even today, people will tell you stuff, and then half the times it won't come true, right?
Yeah.
They'll say, help me out with this homework assignment, and I'll help you out next time. But then when the next time comes around, you try to call or talk to them, good luck finding them, right? People rarely keep their words. And I'm not trying to point fingers at anybody. I'm just trying to give examples that are real to you. People are always trying to do stuff. But here in Leviticus, God told the children of Israel, Leviticus 19:12, and you shall not swear by my name falsely, nor shall you profane the name of your God. I am the Lord. So straight from Moses, God had told Israel, straight from Moses, he had told them, don't use my name when you take an oath. Right? Because what happens if I say that I am going to do something via the name of God? In other words, I'm using that higher power, and I tell you, Bobby, I swear, and I don't want to complete the sentence, but I swear by the Lord that I'm going to do this for you. What happens if I don't do it?
You're damaging the Lord's reputation.
I'm not only damaging my reputation,
The Lord.
I'm damaging the Lord's reputation, right? Because people think, well, this guy's a liar. I mean, he even swore by his own God, and he didn't even do it. And people in those, especially in Israel's time, they took it a lot more seriously. And if you promised that something would take place by the power...
Nowadays, people just throw it around like, I
Yeah.
swear
Like
to
it's
God.
enough.
Yeah.
I swear to God, dude.
Yeah, yes. But back then, in those days, if you swore something would come to pass by the power of your God, and it didn't come to pass, people didn't even blame the person. They blamed it. They blamed it on your God. That your God didn't have power. And so God told the children of Israel, do not go around using my name, promising things. Why?
Because over in the reputation of God.
Because God's not a butler. We can't just say that I do this in the name of God and now it's going to happen, right? I can't just say, by the power of God, I'm going to go down there and get a Mercedes right now. And now God has to give me a Mercedes. God is not our butler. He doesn't have, just because we use his name doesn't mean that he has to jump and respond to us. Okay? And God's saying, don't use my name in that way because you don't speak for me. He speaks for himself. So the children of Israel got into the habit that they said, okay, well, I'm not going to swear by God, but I'm going to swear by things that are still holy. I'm going to swear by heaven because that's above me. Or I'm going to swear by earth. Or I'm going to swear by this temple. Or I'm going to swear by the gold in this temple. Right? What does Jesus say here? But I say to you, do not swear at all. In other words, don't make promises outside of yourself. Neither by heaven, for it is God's throne, nor by earth, for it is his footstool, nor by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. Nor shall you swear by your own head. Don't even promise by your own power. Why? Why, Jesus? Why can't I say to somebody, I swear to you that I'm going to do this? Why? Because Jesus says, you cannot even make one hair white or black.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, today we can go down to HEB and buy some hair dye and dye our hair. Jesus is not talking about that. They had hair dye. The Egyptians had hair dye back in Jesus' day. Jesus is not talking about going and dyeing your hair. He's saying, by my own power, my name, Brian Stokes, I have a bunch of gray hair and I have a bunch of white hair, and I'm 44 years old. But I cannot, by my just thinking about it, or by my own power, now turn my hair back brown like when I was 25 years old. So Jesus is saying, if you can't even control your own hair color, you don't have the power to complete your swears.
I thought when someone said I swear by my head that they meant if they don't do the promise that they'll just cut off their head.
What? No.
I don't know about that.
They were saying
Yeah, I don't know about that. Maybe you might get that with knights and stuff like that, and I don't know. But I don't think they had knights in Jesus' day. The head is the seat of authority, right? So swearing by your head, my impression in studying this is swearing by your head is you're swearing by your most powerful faculty, your mind, your head, which controls yourself, right? And Jesus is saying, you're swearing by your faculty, but you can't even control that what's on top of your faculty, your head, right? He's making a point here. He's showing us that we have very little control over our body. He's showing us that we have very little control over our future. So we should not go around swearing to people, making promises to people, because we don't know what's going to happen in the future. We do not control the future. So you don't need to make promises or oaths or swear to people. It's like many times your mother says, well, when we retire, we're going to go here and do this and do that. Isn't that right, Brian? And I've told her in the past, if God wills. But she doesn't understand that. She's like, what are you saying? You don't want to do it? I was like, no, I'm not saying that I don't want to do it. And I've tried to tell her. I'm saying that if I don't know the future, and if we're still in good health, and if I'm able to retire and you're able to retire, and if we have money, and if there's no complications, see, you don't know the future. So you should not swear, make promises to people. What does Jesus say we should do? Let your yes be yes, and let your no be no. Answer truthfully to people, but don't make promises or oaths about things that you cannot complete.
But mommy always comes up to me or whatever, and she's like, promise me you'll do this.
So how I
And she won't leave me alone.
so how I would respond to this is just tell her, yes, I will do it. You're not promising. You're not swearing. You can't control how other people's language, right? You can't control other people's language, and they say, promise me that you're going to do this. I just tell them, I'm telling you that yes, I have the disposition, or I have the want or the willpower to do this, or to try to do this, right? With that, when I tell them that, I'm telling them I'm going to do my best to do it, right? But I want them to have the understanding of I'm not guaranteeing it. I'm going to do my best, but I cannot guarantee the outcome. Do you understand? Now let's read a few more verses. Richard, turn to Proverbs chapter 10, verse 12.
Okay. Proverbs in the Old or New Testament?
Proverbs is in the Old, and it's right after Psalms.
Proverbs what?
10, verse 12. Wait, hold on just a second.
What about me?
Okay, 10:19. I was sorry about the verse. Go ahead.
Words are many, transgressions is not lacking. Whoever restrains his lips is prudent. The tongue of the righteous.
That's good. That's good. If words are many, Richard's translation said, sin is not lacking, but he who strains his lips is wise. And the New King James says, in the multitude of words, sin is not lacking, but he who restrains his lips is wise. Many times when people want to get their point across, they will say it in many different ways, right? And what I've noticed is many times when people insist too much, they're often lying. Shakespeare, the famous English poet and playwright, said in one of his plays, "Methinkest thou protesteth too much." Right? And you'll notice this. If anyone goes out swearing and promising so much, many times they're hiding something. I promise you that I didn't go there. I'm telling you that I didn't do this. No way, no way, no way. Right? No. The proverb says here, in the multitude of words, sin is not lacking. Right? Many times when we insist too much, there's some sin lying in that. Okay? Take the proverb from another angle. In a multitude of words, sin is not lacking. If we go around talking a lot and promising and making oaths a lot, what's going to happen? Many times, we're not going to be able to complete. How can we live lives that we are truthful in our character and what we say comes to pass?
But like, what if like you know it's the truth? Like you promise them you didn't.
Then you just maintain your story. You just maintain your story.
And you can say I promise, right?
I wouldn't say I promise. I would just maintain my story. Okay. I would just maintain my story.
So you can never use I promise?
I personally, because of the Lord, because now Jesus here many times is talking about swearing or making oaths to the future, and that we use the word here now in modern times. We don't use the word oath or swear so much often. We use the word promise, right?
Yeah.
Has the same meaning. My point earlier, Liliana, was we can't control the future, so we shouldn't be making promises.
I know, but like if it's in the past.
If it's in the past, you would just say you're affirming that what you're saying is true. I prefer the words affirm.
But I can still use.
I'm not that comfortable with it. Just because the Lord's told us not to make swear oaths, right? But many times when people ask something of me, I try to do it as quick as possible, right? Because I want to be a person of character, and I want to be a person that if I tell them that I'm going to do something, which is not a swear, it's not a promise. I mean, it's not an oath or it's not a swear, but it is kind of a promise of an action. And many times when I tell somebody that I'm going to do something, I try to do it immediately afterwards so I don't forget, right? For example, the lady, Brian wasn't with us yesterday, but a lady from the Jehovah's Witness organization called me and tried to witness to me, and I ended up witnessing to her. And I told her on the phone as we were driving to meet my mom and Papa, and I told her on the phone that I was going to pray for her and her family. As soon as I got off the phone, I prayed for her. Why?
So you wouldn't forget.
So I wouldn't forget, right? I wanted to be a person of my word. So many times when people ask me, hey, would you pray for me? Would you do this for me? I do it immediately. Why am I like that? One, I want to be a truthful and honest person. And two, I have had people who have told me things and I expected it and it didn't happen. Right? I've had the people that I respect the most, and the people that you'll respect the most is the people who keep their words. But they don't need to swear or make oaths to keep it, but the people who keep their words. I remember once when I was working with Brother Tenney, we went to the Mississippi camp meeting, okay? And the Mississippi campgrounds are not, I believe, if I remember correct, they're not far out of Jackson. It's a little town in between Jackson and Vicksburg, and they have a nice campground there. And And Brother Tenney was one of the daytime speakers for a few days. Y'all don't know what camp meeting is, but camp meeting is during the summer. Like a lot of churches of a state come together, and they all fellowship together, and then they all hear sermons and stuff together. You know, for like 2 or 3 days.
Did we go to that for like the thing when we went to the big place?
Which big place?
Remember? It was, I think it was like in Austin. No, not in Austin. Dallas.
Dallas? No, that was a conference. That was not a camp meeting. But that's It's similar. It's similar. It's similar. That's similar. Yeah, it's similar. A camp meeting is kind of like that. So Brother Tenney, the man I was driving for when I was in college, he was one of the daytime speakers. And one of the other daytime speakers was a man by the name of Merle Conway, or Cormel or Conway. I can't remember. It's something with a C. I can't remember his last name. Merle Conway. I'll remember it later. But he's originally from Louisiana. He's a guy from Louisiana, Faraday, I believe, Louisiana. But he's been pastor of a church many years. He may be retired now, but many years he was pastor of a church, I want to say in Wichita, Kansas. Okay, Kansas above Oklahoma. Well, Merle, this preacher, he's always been a big adherent and pusher of home Bible studies, right? He would always go around Wichita, meeting people, being nice to people, and setting up home Bible studies and teaching them, going through, and he would do summaries of the Bible like in 10 to 15 weeks. He'd go to people's house for 10 to 15 weeks and teach them about the whole Bible and try to bring them to conversion with the Lord, right? And start attending his church, and he'd had a lot of success doing that. Well, he really studied the Bible, and he knew it well. And he was talking. This is in the 90s, so there was a tape series, right? We didn't even have CDs back then. It was mostly tapes, cassette tapes. And he was talking about how he had this tape series. Now everything's on YouTube, right? But he was talking about how he had this tape series that he really wanted to encourage people to study. And I told him, because we were fellowshipping, eating after one of the meetings and stuff, and he was with Brother Tenney, and he was talking about it. And I just happened to mention, I was like, I may get those tapes. I'd like to have those tapes. I may get those. And he said, I'm going to give you those tapes right now, today. He said, I don't have them with me, but I'm gonna get it, and before you leave, I'm gonna get it. You know what he did? He gave me those cassette tapes. Just gave them to me. Didn't normally he'd sell them. He just gave them to me. I just kind of made a wish. Hey, I think I'd like that. Yeah. He goes, I'm gonna give you something. Boom. He gave it to me. Right? What do you think that made me think of that man?
That he kept his word?
He's a guy who keeps his word. This is a guy that I'm gonna listen to and I'm gonna trust. Right? Because he's somebody. He's somebody who tells me it and he does it.
Daddy, is this?
Okay, y'all just stop. Okay. The other thing now on the other side, and we're almost done, y'all. But on the other side, I've had people tell me that they were going to do something. I've had people borrow money from me, and then they never give it back. I'm not talking about great bets of money, but I've had like a guy one time. He was in a hard place, a guy I went to church with, and he just needed some money. He was in a hard place, and I loaned him $10. Yeah. That was over 20 years ago. I hadn't seen the guy. That was over probably 25 years ago, and I hadn't seen the guy in the last 20 years. I'm not getting my $10 back, right? He never gave it back to me. And I've had other people say, "Oh, I have this book that you really would like. I'm going to give that book to you." And never gave me the book, right? So many times, what I'm telling you is there are some people that keep their word, and we need to be people that keep our word. And then there's other people that don't keep their word, and many times the people who don't keep their word, they try to add a lot of words to it to make it seem like they're going to keep their word, right? I swear to you, I promise you that I'm going to do this, and this is going to happen, right? And I'm not gonna put blame on those people, but many times it's not that people don't. Many times people want to do good, and they have the desire to do good and to bless you. Many times people, when they say they're going to do something good for you, but they don't know the future, and they can't, and then they forget about it. They don't know what's going on, right? I'm not saying that people have bad motivations, but many times people promise you things that they can't keep. Let's not be those type of people. Let's be people who say yes and mean yes and no and mean no. But you don't have to go around swearing and giving oaths, right? Because like Jesus said, we can't even control the hair on our head. Does anybody like to say anything? Want to add anything to it?
So you just basically something. Don't make any oaths because you don't have control of what you can do.
That's right.
And also, if you do make a promise, do it immediately and
try to get it done with, right? And try to do it to the best of your ability. Now, in closing, life obligates you to make some promises. The world that we live in obligates you to make some promises, right? For example, my Toyota, I had to sign paperwork and say I didn't have the cash to pay for that Toyota, right? I couldn't just walk into the Toyota dealership and say, boom, $25,000, here you go. I didn't have $25,000. So they set up an interest plan, and over a period of 5 years, I was supposed to pay off that car, like 300
Did
something.
you?
Yes, about 300. Or we wouldn't have the car if you did. If you don't pay for your cow, they come and take it away from you, right? And that happens to people all the time. But normally what I do when I get a car, I normally pay it off early. One, I don't like having payments, but two, I like to complete my devotion, or what I say I'm going to do. I like to complete it early. I like to get it over with. So if the car bill is $350 a month, many times I'm paying $380 a month. Why? One, I want to get it over with. And two, if you pay more, you're cutting into the principal. You're going to end up paying more interest before it's done. And you'll actually pay it off early many times. But sometimes in life you're going to have to make some promises, right? And there are some promises that God authorizes to do. For example, marriage. The marriage vows that we take comes from England. But you're making a vow for better, for worse, for richer, or for poor, in sickness and in health. You're making a promise. I'm going to share my life with this individual, and I'm going to be with them. If they're sick, if they're rich, if they're poor, I am going to stick it through. There are some promises that you do commit to. They're societal promises. But in general, we should not go around swearing or affirming. We should not go around swearing or making oaths. Even the military has wording to kind of get around this issue. When I swore to be in the Air Force, the swearing in part, they said, do you swear or affirm, right? Because they know that some Christians don't want to say the word, I swear, right? And so, I said, I affirm, right? I did that. Society requires us to make some oaths, but we need to be people of our words. We need to try to complete it, and we don't need to go around being people that use a lot of words to try to convince things and not do it. Okay, I think I've talked enough. Let's close in prayer. Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for your word. Father, I pray that these lessons would impact us for the glory of God. In Jesus' name, amen.